According to the 2022 Data Breach Investigations Report, the human remains the number one driver of breaches today, demonstrating that cybersecurity is no longer just a technical challenge, but a human one as well. But how do you manage the human risks of cybersecurity? It starts with measurement. Only by effectively quantifying human risk can organizations engage employees with relevant activities to truly change human behavior. That's human risk management. Map key human behaviors to the business risks that matter most to your organization for free by visiting securityweekly.com/living security.
Mimecast has released its State of Ransomware Readiness Report for 2022, finding that most cybersecurity leaders experience the same or increasing numbers of ransomware attacks over last year. Together with Mimecast, organizations can stand strong in the face of cyber attacks, human error, technical failure, and work protected. Mimecast, work protected. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Michael Santarcangelo, Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and Josh Marpet. Join our Discord channel to chat with our hosts, ask questions, customize live stream alerts, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/Discord to receive an invite. And if you have a question for this segment, drop it into Discord because we're going to try to monitor all the channels for this next segment. All right, gentlemen. So we have some questions that came across in advance for the Ask Me Anything segment. I do have Discord open here in the corner, so in case any questions come across. And I also have Slack over here in case Sam or Renee find something as well. Okay. This first one I think should go to Michael. You ready, Michael?
I'm ready.
What are your top three best practices while working for a company with subpar leadership?
So let's set aside the fact that best practices is usually a misnomer. But if you're working for a place that has bad leadership or subpar leadership, it is a great opportunity to learn to practice leadership. And so in terms of the three things that I would recommend, the first of which is knowing your aspiration and learning to tease out other people's. Everything that folks have talked about in terms of the need to align with the business, to earn trust, right? It works in the order of known, liked, and trusted. So you need to think about the aspiration for your part of the business, understand the aspiration of the business, help people connect the dots. Like it's that. The other thing, bluntly, I mean, if you're in a place with subpar leadership, why are you staying? Why not look for someplace else? So if you don't feel that you have that luxury for whatever reason, then your opportunity is learn how to lead your team, even if you're not getting the leadership that you want. Don't worry about leading up and managing up and all that crap. Focus on being valuable in the role that you're in without overshining other people, without needing to get credit for it. Use it as an opportunity to learn and provide the leadership to your team that you want. Remember, right? You lead people, you manage process, you boss nobody. So the people on your team, what are they looking for? They want to grow. How do you grow? Solve harder problems. Cool. That means you can't pigeonhole people or keep them locked down to just the one thing that they're good at, maybe with some rare exceptions. People need to contribute. So what are they contributing to? What are you offering them? What are they part of? What are they getting by working with you? What value are they contributing? And then how are they earning recognition for it? Are you seeing your people? Are you seeing the folks that you're responsible for? Are you elevating their performance? Are you helping them grow? Even if that means leaving the team or leaving the organization or finding a better fit for them, those skill sets are unbelievably transferable to every organization. And if you're successful, maybe you'll get that opportunity to be influential and guide other people down the similar type of path.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Michael. Leadership isn't a title, right?
Nope.
Leadership is not a title. So it's not in an org chart. So for me, it's be there to serve, build the relationships. I'm a big fan of servant leadership, right? So if you're building relationships, you're understanding the business unit leaders across the organization, you're building those relationships, you're understanding where their struggles are and how you can help, and you're there to serve, you're building that trust, you're building that influence, right? Model the way throughout the organization. Be that model. Because it's all about the definition of what subpar leadership is when you say subpar leadership. Is it the leadership doesn't have the skill sets to lead? So many leaders have gone up through the ranks and really never been shown what they need for core skills to be a successful leader. Well, maybe you can model the way. Maybe you can show them the way. And as you rise through the organization and build influence throughout the organization, maybe you can help build a leadership program. I've started things like leadership academies at organizations. So that way we can all grow together as leaders. Subpar could mean they're just ineffective leaders and they're not servant leaders. And, they're more bred out of that GE type leadership, which I'm totally against. I hate that model. But maybe you can model the way. Maybe you can show the rest of the organization how to be effective leaders. If not, then that's toxic leadership within your organization. You're absolutely right. Maybe it's time for you to move on.
You know what I like about that, though, too? Sorry, I was just going to add to Jason's comment and just say, what's nice about it, too, is if you're in an environment where you've assessed subpar leadership, first of all, how did you achieve that understanding? Because, do you have the complete perspective? But let's just assume at face value that's accurate. Well, then the bar's kind of low and it's a great opportunity to learn. And just embrace that you're probably going to make mistakes, and ideally they won't be fatal. And even if they seem fatal, they're not. I mean, to your point, Jason, most people don't get leadership training. And when you start really looking into our industry, and then you look at the concept of digital transformation, there's even less. And so there's a lot to figure out, because security is also always changing, right? So you have the shifting templates of the business world, plus the security world, plus trying, the change from an individual contributor to having responsibility for other people and the privilege of guiding them and helping them to do better. That's a lot. That's a lot on the plate. So, if you're in a place where it's not great, good. You'll be something better than what's not there, and good way to learn and probably make some mistakes. That's okay.
At the end of the day, it could be a very, very important opportunity for you in your growth as a professional. It could be a great opportunity for you to influence and help build leaders within the organization and make that organization successful at the end of the day. And then you'll be seen as the catalyst. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a follow-up
confirm being a catalyst is awesome.
Or alternatively, if it doesn't go well, just leave it off your resume. It's okay.
I mean, you can always evaluate and learn something from any one of the companies that you're at. You can always learn how not to do things and take notes, and don't discount the opportunity to grow in your current role, but also the opportunity to learn while you're somewhere. You have the capability to grow in leadership, business acumen, grow your relationships, because often if it's not a great organization, people are going to move on. Wherever they move on to, if you facilitated a good relationship, that relationship can be a catalyst to your next leaping point or business partnership. Those things are very important. So use that time to be growing, use that time to be learning new skills, to sharpen your current skills, and look for the opportunity to create long-standing pathways and roadmaps. Often people get very caught up in the short term, but if you facilitate and build relationships and you're thinking a 5 or 10-year plan, no one's staying at any organization for 5 or 10 years anymore. So make sure that you're doing and looking like the pro that you are in your current organization, because there's people that are going to move on, maybe your next leaping point or your next partnership that has a big $1 million idea or has the next big VC fund. So don't discount those things.
Bravo. Well said, Tyler.
So there was a follow-up question about book suggestions for leadership and communication, right? If this is a learning experience and they need some guidance, I know Jason, Michael, you guys both know where some of those good leadership and communication skill books are.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I just got a book called Unbreakable by Kirkman and Stovernick, and it's about leadership in the economic situation we're in right now. Pandemic holdover, uncertainty from a financial perspective and an economy perspective, the changed norms that we have, having professional teams that are resilient. Just started it, but it's a good read so far. So, if you're struggling with some of those things from, post-pandemic leadership skills, it's really helpful. So how to get teams through adversity and become more resilient in this, in this more remote workforce. So it's really good there. Go to for me, Why Leaders Eat Last by Sinek, really good one. Love that book. I mean, he spent time with the Marine Corps, so obviously I'm biased there. But at the end of the day, it teaches a lot about that servant leadership that I talk about a lot.
Can I give an oldie but a goodie?
Mm-hmm.
Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best books I've ever read about how to actually just get out of your own head and get things done and make friends and understand how to ask for help, which is an important skill of being an adult, and how to be, partially at least, how to be a leader by listening to people. So remember, the definition of a leader is someone who has followers. If you don't get to know people, you'll never have followers.
Michael, any good suggestions?
Oh gosh, I probably have a ton of them. I'll tell you the thing I've been taken with lately, and it's part of my own journey. If you're going to read the book, are you going to act on it? I mean, like we kind of grew up with this mentality that if someone recommends a book, I should read it. I should read all the words of it. I should take notes and then take notes on my notes, and then my notes should be fancy notes that I can then quote to other people about my fancy notes, and it all sounds fantastic. If you could pick up a book and get one thing out of it that you could apply, that let you be better, that maybe ideally let you share with other people, oh man, you'd crush it. So I think the suggestions that were made were fantastic suggestions. The thing is, if you're looking for books on communication or you're looking for books on leadership, there's no shortage of them. So what I'd almost suggest is go look for the things that intrigue you or look at the things that terrify you. For example, selling terrifies most of us. So I ended up picking up a book last year called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. It was written in the 40s, maybe the 30s. It was delightful. Like I got a lot out of it that I've been able to put into motion. So like when we think about a modern security leader, they need to listen. They need to learn how to listen. They need to learn how to speak. But we also need to learn how to sell. We need to learn how to market. We need to understand framing and positioning. So that book in particular is good. The other one that's really taken me, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, is Pitch Anything by Orrin Claff. Talks a lot about how to establish a power frame and how to frame and how to establish the environment of which you're going to convey information. That one's really good. There's a bunch of short ones and other things to read, but like if I think about the stuff that still makes a difference of the original three that Paul and I had come up with, the only one that still for me remains is Never Split the Difference. That book continues to just be an absolute powerhouse in thinking about how to communicate and how to understand what other people want and how to help them understand what they want.
Yeah. No, that's a great book.
Never Split it. Great.
Yeah, it reminded me too when you said that, Michael. Get out of your comfort zone, right? One of the first things that I did when I took the role of chief operating officer, coming from CISO to CIO and then becoming chief operating officer, that's a whole different world being a chief operating officer, right? Because now you're having strategic business conversations about how to grow a business. The first thing I did was I went out and I got a book called Rocket Fuel. And Rocket Fuel is a book about the relationship between the CEO, which is a visionary, right? That visionary mindset, and what they call the integrator, which is the chief operating officer, and how to have that beautiful relationship between the two, because you have to understand each other's mindset, right? And the integrator is someone who's focused on building process, building repeatable process, right? Creating efficiencies within the organization, integrating all of your service lines into the business. And then how do you work with the visionary who's thinking, 50,000 feet in the air and isn't necessarily involved in the nuances of the day to day and could be out there, making promises that are going to be hard to keep. How do you have that relationship and become successful? It's called Rocket Fuel. It's an awesome book.
Yeah, and it's a Gino Wickman book who's got a lot of great stuff there. I've seen a lot of smaller companies use Traction. And then they
Traction came before that. Yep.
Yeah, like if somebody's new to this concept, if they start with Traction, it's a fairly quick read and it's got a bunch of great ideas. Now, depending on the size of their team, how the organization works, but there's a lot of folks who lean to that, and I think that's a great suggestion. On that line too, Don Miller, he's got a book on StoryBrand. He's got Business Made Simple, Marketing Made Simple. They're pretty dynamic. Like I would start with Business Made Simple or StoryBrand because you're going to learn a lot about that communication side of things.
Yeah, I was going to mention never split the difference in extreme ownership. I think that's those are really good. But I think one of the things we're kind of all pivoting around talking a little bit about is, understanding business is really important, but I think you have to understand communication.
Yeah.
And so things like, where Deloitte does, I think it's like a 4-block, it's business chemistry, right? But it's the interrelationships between people. It's understanding like what people's motivations, drivers are, what their fears are, and then trying to understand what yours are and how that you differ from the approach to that communication problem. I think that's a really important part of leadership, is understanding how to communicate with people and what the differences are between communication styles that will get you more effect if you understand how to communicate effectively with somebody.
Yeah, I would also highly recommend, books are fantastic, and I try and do at least one or two business books a month. There's some great ones out there. Really getting on a regular digestible schedule of nuggets that can help you, like whatever you're focused on. If it's figuring out how to focus better, if it's figuring out how to run a team, speak publicly better, all these things are self-improvements. So having that in your social media feeds where you're regularly digesting good material and really cleaning out the stuff that is not productive or healthy for your brain. Those are the ways that I continually find little nuggets of things that I can action on very quickly, because you're right. If you don't do anything with the info you read, or it takes you too long to read it and it's now no longer viable, that book has not served your purpose very well. Most books are long-standing and last long, but really making sure you're implementing the things and finding good ways to do that very quickly and more effectively, I think has been a priority for me. But if you're looking for a couple business ones, People Over Profit is one of my latest really, really good ones. Obviously, any of the extreme ownerships ones, Indistractable, Hyperfocus, 10X Rule, all those are great business books. But make sure whatever you're reading is being applied and you take enough effort and self-evaluation to do the things that you're listening to and reading on a regular basis.
Yeah, Michael and Tyler, you hit it on the head. It's like a strategic plan. What good is it if it's up on a shelf and you're not executing against it, right? It's no good at all. So when you read one of these books and you spend the time and you take your time and really digest this information, come out of it with a plan of 2 or 3 things that you can take from the book and actually put it into your daily life, right? Execute against it. It's no good if it sits on a shelf.
Yep. All right, I'm going to answer this next one. Which BSW host is the most fun at parties? That's Tyler Robinson, hands down.
I agree. Although I've been known to fuel the fire in Vegas, right, Tyler?
Yeah. We'll say there are plenty of instigators. I just keep the party going.
Right. I love this next question. I'm going to start with Ben, and then we'll go to Jason, and then anybody else. Should the CISO role be a C-level role? And who should it report to and why?
Thanks for turning that over to me, Matt. Setting me up there. Well, look, I guess I question, if it's Chief Information Security Officer, why would it be anything else other than a C-level role? And that's part of my conundrum about how sometimes these roles are placed. I've seen roles where people will try to hire a CISO, and it's really a director level position, and there's no power to it. So call it a director, right? Call it a vice president, but don't call it a CISO. I think ultimately there's got to be somebody who's responsible for cyber information risk at a company, right? And that's got to have a seat at the table. And one of the reasons why you have to be part of that C-level discussion is, again, it's like asset management. If you don't know where the company's headed and what the point of what you're trying to protect is, then how are you going to do it effectively well? And so you may not value the opinion of the CISO when it comes to business strategy, but I'll tell you, if you don't share your strategy with the CISO, you're not going to have a very effective program. So that's my answer on that. As to report, I'm a firm believer moving forward, it's got to be a CEO level report, right? Depending upon the size of the org, could be chief operating officer, maybe it could be a chief risk officer, but that really depends upon the size of the org, and you got it really big for that to happen. Ultimately, though, it's got to be CEO or board level reporting. You've got to have that level of responsibility. You got to have that conversation with people who are actually understanding at a top level what the impact to the company is. I don't think you do it successfully any other way in the future. No,
100% agreed. I mean, if you're gonna have a C in that title, it needs to have influence at the C level, right? Ultimately, and it's going to be appreciated at that executive level. So 100%, from my perspective, should be rolled up to senior level leadership, meaning CEO or COO. If you have a chief risk officer, maybe. But ultimately, I think the CISO's role is evolving into chief risk officer. I mean, we've seen that happen, Matt, a lot. I mean, we interviewed John, right? That was his natural progression, was the chief risk officer. And I've said it a million times here, understand risk or you'll end up reporting to it.
Yeah, agreed. Wholeheartedly. And there was this article we covered, I think last week or the week before, about, is the CISO a C-level position? Should it just be a senior vice president role? Does it really have the authority to make a decision or not? Where sometimes you need the decisions to be made by other parts of the business. So is it truly a C-level title? So Ben, you touched on that a little bit, which is why I started with you, because you weren't privy to that article last week.
No, but you also know I have definitive opinions on this side of the topic, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of organizations fail with this, right? And like, while other organizations may weigh in, I mean, the CFO doesn't report to the chief legal officer. Chief legal officer doesn't report to, the CIO. It doesn't make sense. It's a vertical that needs to stand on its own with its own level of responsibility. And the question isn't, does somebody else need to make the decision? It's, you need to empower the CISO to be able to make the decision, right? And again, in order to make those decisions effectively, they need to be aware of what's going on in the organization and be a party to all those discussions. And as a CISO, it's your responsibility to understand that language, be able to talk EBITDA, be able to talk, what's going on with business strategy and the current impacts of the downturn in the market. I mean, you need to be privy to that. And you need to be informed. So, I mean, that's part of when we talk about books. You need to inform yourself on the rest of the business, not just security.
Yeah. I think let's flip it on its ear. Where shouldn't the CISO report to, right? I mean, I've seen CISOs report to CFOs. I don't think that makes sense. I'm a firm believer of the CISO not reporting to the CIO. You know that for a fact. I've said that a million times. Those are places I just don't think it makes sense for them to report.
Yep, agreed. This next question, two-parter. All right. Which of your security budgets will be most impacted by ChatGPT? And what function is it going to replace?
Interesting. Right now, I don't think anything's going to get replaced by ChatGPT at all. I think right now it's a tool in the toolbox to gain some efficiencies. I'm a firm believer in trust but verify at the end of the day. So, in the very near future, it's not replacing anything.
Until organizations begin to hire prompt engineers or do formal training around prompting and getting how the models actually train themselves and getting the most effective information out, like, I still won't even trust it to write an email. So there's a lot of work. ChatGPT-4 has a lot of potential, and with the integration of plugins and connecting it into live data, there's a lot of risk involved, and there's a lot of things that we're going to see a bunch of mistakes made. But I believe the capability will begin to develop. So I think we're not going to be replacing people. I think it's going to be kind of that. We're gonna use the buzzwords, the single pane of glass, where we're able to actually get some high fidelity alerting capabilities from heuristics and quicker speed around mitigation, monitoring, prioritization of actionable intelligence. The intelligence is still going to need to be fed. It's still going to have humans at the other end of it. And from a program and leadership standpoint, like, there's nothing within inside of that toolbox, I think, that can replace any of those.
Agreed 100%. Yeah. I mean, again, it's that shift left mentality. Get some of the noise away, right? Use it as a tool to gain efficiencies. But outside of that, I don't see it replacing anything.
Yeah, I think the question, what will ChatGPT replace, or what staff will you augment with it? I don't think that's really the right question, right? I think the question is, like, how do we effectively, and where is AI effectively used in the security organization? And so I think you guys are dead on the money there. I'm not going to get rid of security operations analysts, right? But what I probably am going to do is try to figure out how to use the talent I have more effectively given higher order tasks, and use ChatGPT, another AI tool, as a tool, right? Use it to fill in and do low-level repetitive tasks, or give me indications on where I'm going to then focus energy and expertise. It's the same conversation that I've had with people around outsourcing. Like, I'm looking to outsource trivial things, low-end work, things that can be done that I don't want to hire expensive people that are going to get burned out and bored with, right? I'm going to utilize those staff to do more high intelligent order functions, do things that are more important to the organization long term, and help them build their skills. And I'll use AI as a tool to build that up and foundationally create a basis on which to work.
If you reframe the question for outsourcing, right, and you put ChatGPT in there, I think you're spot on. You can do a lot of the same calculations. ChatGPT or outsourcing really should be a retention strategy more than anything. Get rid of the work that causes people friction, frustration inside the business, and causes your qualified people to want to leave because the retention and or growth patterns or repetitive work that sucks. Those are the places that you need to leverage things like outsourcing because you're not caring about it.
That's right. Use it to eliminate non-value add.
Yeah,
there's two things here too, though, right?
So you don't need complexity and high-value employees to be able to handle, right? And if you ask those same questions, like, am I getting the return on the investment that I'm spending in outsourcing? Are they doing the work I need? Then it's an acceptable replacement or substitution, and I can move those internal work teams off. You have to ask that same question on AI. If you're getting putting bad data in and getting bad data out, then there really isn't a lot of value to it. If you start to get some value out of it, you weigh the value against what the cost is, and that's where you implement effectively.
So the two things to think about, Microsoft has poured billions of dollars into this, and they just announced last week they're working on Copilot in private beta. But what kind of caught my attention was it said, let's see, there's a learning curve, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's usefully wrong. Oh, but here, it can process 1,000 alerts and give you the 2 incidents that matter in seconds. And then it can reverse engineer code, and it can create a PowerPoint summary for you. Now, as a writer who's looked at a lot of this stuff, I don't even recommend it as a first draft. But what I've realized is it's useful for research. It's useful for summarization. It's useful to learn about your organizations. And the other parts of your organization are absolutely running with it. So I like the question. I think it's more like instead of what will it replace, I tend to agree. I think it will augment and improve, but also the rest of the business is using it. Do you want to be somebody who's part of that conversation, or do you want to try to react to it later? And so it's more of a question of what can we do with it today that doesn't create a distraction for us or anybody else?
And we have to be embedded in it in order to articulate the risk of using it to the rest of the business. Right? Because there is a risk to using it at the end of the day. So I want to be able to have those conversations with the other business leaders who are using it and say, trust but verify. Let's take a look at this. I mean, Copilot is the perfect example, Michael. I was part of Microsoft Secure when they did the announcement and they were talking through it, and they were actually demoing it live. And one of the answers that came up, I forgot the question they asked, but one of the answers came up and said, make sure you're securing your Windows 10 and Windows 9 machines. That's stuck in my head. There's no such thing as Windows 9. But ChatGPT gave that as a result, right? On a demo. And they called it out in the conference, right? So trust but verify.
But Jason, that goes back to actually, like the discussion we always have is you've got to be part of the business and aware of what's going on in the business, right? If you're not using this as an opportunity to look at this new tool, AI in general, right, in many different iterations, whether it's in marketing or sales or underlying financial economics, if you're not understanding how the technology is being used and where the pitfalls are because you're seeing them, then you're leaving out a whole host of information on how to give color when somebody says, hey, I want to use this tool. And if you just come back and say, no, it's an unknown and it's scary, that's a horrible answer,
Absolutely
right?
Agreed.
Hey, this is a bad tool because we've used it. We understand what's going on. We understand where the pitfalls are. And if you use it within these guardrails, it's acceptable. But outside these guardrails, we have some real concerns.
Yep.
So in 3 weeks...
Let me add one more piece too, because Tyler brought this up. But in my experience, most organizations now have data engineers, and they love talking about this, probably about as much as we love talking about things like security. So when we asked about, do we get platform engineers that help us engineer better prompts? Yes. And most organizations have them. And despite a misguided belief that they're too busy and don't want to talk about this stuff, they love it. And we have a lot of tools at our disposal. And in fact, I would even argue sometimes non-security people figuring out the security questions to ask is great because they don't bring some of the same biases or experience that we have. And we get really good results amidst all the other stuff we've talked about that is not great results.
Here's the downside. In 3 weeks, a bunch of people are going to San Francisco at RSA conference. You're going to see, I think, a ton of AI FUD. all over the floor show in the expo hall, and as a participant, like, what do you believe and what don't you believe? Right? We saw this a couple years ago. I think ChatGPT just took it to the next level. I bet there's AI signage like everywhere. And so, what kind of guidance do you give people?
Like 4 or 5 years ago, like AI, ML, like every security vendor wanted to talk about that. And now we have something that the average, casual, everyday grandma understands it. I've heard of ChatGPT, right? But I agree with you. I think it's going to go on steroids at this point. Like everybody's going to have something AI related.
Yeah, makes our jobs harder to find the right technologies that we really think are going to solve our problems. So
hey, do the basics right.
Plays out. Yeah. Can I use it for asset management?
Asset management. Yeah, I was
do the basics right.
Go find out my assets.
ChatGPT, where are my vulnerabilities?
Yeah. What haven't I patched? What haven't I patched in 5 years?
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. So who is going to RSA in a few weeks?
I am not, unfortunately.
I am on the fence.
Undetermined.
Oh, a bunch of undetermined. Mm-hmm. Michael, you going?
No,
you probably
not going this year.
Go. Wow. So it looks like I'm the only guy going this year.
Send us
I am
back some
going
intel.
for a couple days.
Send us back some intel.
Yeah, we need to think about this ahead and do get like a VRBO and do the Business Security Weekly House and just have ongoing content and invite people over.
There you go.
Yeah,
man, that's great.
Sounds fun.
It's a great idea. We'll have to do that at another time because right now everything is super expensive in San Francisco that week. Like it's nuts. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for this special edition. It was great to have Michael back on. It was great to get all the current hosts together for this discussion. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.